I want to play on my Pocket Air. No wait, I want to use my Odin 2. Never mind, I'm leaving the house. I want to use my RetroArch Pocket Flip. Okay, I'm back home. I want to use my Anbernic RG353P. Hey everyone, and welcome back to Joey's Retro Handhelds. I'm Joey, and today I'm going to show you how to set up save syncing across your Android devices so you can go from one to another to another to another and play the same game and the same save. Plus, this actually syncs Dolphin saves, NetherSX2 saves, Yuzu saves, and every other emulator that saves behind Android scoped storage. The app that we're going to use today, FolderSync, actually has access to all of that, and it works perfectly. Now, I need to put a disclaimer on this video, obviously. We are dealing with saves here, the lifeblood of all of us, because if I lost the save that I put in 40 hours in, I would be very angry. So, before doing anything, make sure that you back up your saves. Put it somewhere, on your desktop, on a computer, anywhere you want. Just keep it off of the device and keep it off of the cloud for now. Just in case things go wrong. Just back them up. Personally, I haven't lost a save yet, but I also know what I'm doing. So, for you, maybe just be careful. Now, if you're staring blankly at the screen right now saying, well, I don't even know where my saves are, let me help you. I'm going to leave a link in the description to my website, and it has a list of a bunch of different emulators for Android and where the save files are. So just go one by one, depending on the emulators that you're using. A lot of them are there. Go and find where your saves are and then back them up onto your PC. Should be pretty easy and self-explanatory for you to just do so. An easy way to just get them over to your PC, connect a USB cable to the device to your PC, enable file transfer in Android, and there you go. You're ready to go. This guide is going to be slightly complicated for the general user, so this is a bit more advanced. So if you find yourself watching this and getting a bit confused, it might be something you want to avoid, especially since we're dealing with saves. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to try and dumb it down as much as I can here to make it simple for everybody, but there are certain things that just are going to be tough for an average user, so keep that in mind. Okay, so let's talk about some preparation ahead of time, things that you need to do before we start. First up, make sure that you have emulators installed at least on one of the devices. So let's say you're going to use your Odin 2. Make sure that your emulators are installed already, and ideally you would want saves already on the device because we're going to be backing them up. So make sure you have emulators and saves on your device ready to go. So any device that you've been using normally up to this point is going to be the main device that we're going to start with. Then once we get that all synced up, I'll show you how you can add other devices to the mix, and that way you have everything syncing properly. By the way, today's video sponsor is PCBWay. Have you been finding a lot of cool 3D prints online and wishing that you had a 3D printer to print them all? But then you go and see the price of one of those and you're like, nope, I'm back to wishing. PCBWay allows you to upload those designs and files, they'll print them for you, and then they're going to ship them to you. Easy peasy, save yourself a ton of money, and get those awesome 3D prints. Even cooler, they're now offering UV printing, which lets you print high-quality images on a bunch of different materials. Check them out, link down below. Okay, let's just jump right in. First thing we're going to need to do is head to the Google Play Store and download an app called FolderSync. And go ahead and open it when it's done downloading. Agree to the terms and accept the privacy policy. Now you need to give it access to permissions for your device, so click each of them and give access. You can skip location and background unless you only want to sync saves on certain Wi-Fi connections. But for 99% of you, this isn't going to apply, and for the people that it does apply to, you already know, so you can skip this. Once you have all your green check marks, just click Finish, and we're now at the main FolderSync screen. The first emulator we're going to sync is RetroArch, and since that's likely the one that everybody uses on every single device, so let's just make it easy. Now, there's a very big asterisk with RetroArch saves and states especially. For saves, the asterisk is a bit smaller, but it's the same idea. Essentially, imagine that you were playing on your RG353P, and you're using a RetroArch core that's different than the one on the Odin 2. And let's say it's Game Boy Advance. You're using GPSP on one and MGBA on the other. I actually don't remember if they save differently, but doesn't matter. Let's say GPSP saves in a different file format than what MGBA does. So you have one saving differently than the other. And I think this applies a lot to Nintendo DS, but either way. What's going to happen is when we sync these two devices, you're not going to be able to carry over the same save because they're using different cores and different file formats for saves. One is looking for one specific file format, the other is looking for another. So what you have to do is just make sure that all of your Android devices are using the same RetroArch cores. So all of your cores in RetroArch, make sure they're the same. Whatever you're using for GBA, whatever you're using for SNES, all of that. Make sure it's the same on all of them. Now for me, this is easy. I've been doing this forever. I always use the same cores on every single device. And if you want a list of what I recommend, I'm going to leave a link in the description so you can check that out. That's how I set my devices up. And this also matters for states. This is actually bigger for states. Because if you're using a different core on each device and you want to sync states, which is actually how I do it, it's not going to sync. It's basically going to be a complete disaster for you. So before you start this guide, number one, make sure all of your cores and your saves are using the same cores on all your devices. That is the easiest way for you to avoid any potential issues, is make sure that all of them are the same configuration that way. Otherwise, you're just going to have some big problems here. So you did all of that. You're making sure that you've saved, and if you saved in a previous configuration, you've converted it to the new core and all of that sort of thing, and that is completely outside of this guide. So I'm hoping you know what you're doing, but either way, just make sure it's all the same. We can continue now, and we're going to start with RetroArch saves first, and then we'll do states afterwards. So in Folder Sync, click Create Folder Pair in the bottom right. Go ahead and give it a name, and I'm just going to call it RA Saves. Then keep Sync V2 selected and click Next. Now we're at the first big decision, and we need to tell the device how to sync. Ultimately, two-way is what we're going to be using, meaning that files stay in sync both on the device and in the cloud, keeping them the same. However, we don't have our saves in the cloud just yet, and we need to get them there. So, for right now, the option that we want is to write folder. And that's what we need to do to get this set up for the first time. Next, we need to choose our folders, and they could have labeled this a little bit better, but left folder is local, meaning the folder that's actually on your device, and right folder is the folder on the cloud, or whatever is in your Google Drive or what you're going to be using. So that's the distinction between left and right. Go ahead and select your left folder, and you're going to want to navigate to your internal storage, RetroArch, and the saves folder, and select it. If you backed up everything before, like I suggested, then you should already remember this path. But if you need to know where all of the paths are, like I said before, check the description. Now we want to scroll to the right folder, and you want to click SD card. Then add account. Now you want to select the cloud service that you're going to be using. And like I mentioned before, I'm actually going to be using Google Drive. So sign into your cloud service and all of that, and then click the test button. Just make sure it all works, and it should just be green and says, yeah, you're good. Click the back arrow when you're done, and now you can tap the SD card again, and this time you want to change it to Google Drive or whichever cloud service you chose. Then click Select Folder, and now you should see all of your folders that are on your cloud service. And you can now decide where you want to save your saves, for example. And for the ease of simplicity, and for me, I am just going to create a folder right at the top level, and I'm going to call it Saves. And inside of that folder, I'm going to create another folder, and it's going to be called RA Saves for RetroArch saves. Just click that folder and select bottom right. Then go ahead and click Next, and then click Save. We're now on the FolderPair syncing screen, and so far, all we've done is say, hey, we want to copy all of the files that we have in the RetroArch saves folder to our cloud services RA saves folder. But it hasn't done it yet, so let's do that now. Click the sync button on the left. Depending on how many saves you have, this could take some time, so just wait. Now, this screen doesn't give you a lot of information as the sync is happening. So wait for the sync to finish, and then we're going to go to the back arrow on the top left, and then click History, and you'll see the folder pair there, and it's called RA Saves, and we transferred 236 files. If you click the plus icon on the right, you can see further what we did. This screen also will tell you if there's any conflicts or any issues, but since we just created this from scratch, you should just be fine. Now head back and click the folder icon, and then click our folder pair to get back to where we were. Now we have both our device and the cloud folders with the exact same files, so we can now select two-way as our sync type. Once you select two-way, any changes that you make to your files locally or in the cloud will be synced. So exactly everything that you do to either or is going to be synced, and it keeps them the same. This is especially important if we're going to be adding more devices because we want them to continually stay in sync. So you want two-way sync enabled. Go ahead and click sync again just in case, and you should see that nothing happens and everything's green. You're all good. Now let's look at a few options for this sync. Click Sync Options at the top right, and personally I enable sync deletions. So if I delete a file or a save on either end, both locally or cloud, it deletes it from the other and keeps it in sync. This is personal preference, but I prefer having this enabled. Scroll down and we now have to tell FolderSync how to decide on conflicts. So, for example, let's say you made a save on your device, but you were offline and you forgot to connect it to Wi-Fi. Then, you go ahead and play on another device, and you play the same game and you make a new save. You now have two saves that are out of sync, so the next time that your first device connects to Wi-Fi, it's going to be very confused. How do we handle this situation with two saves that haven't been updated yet in the cloud? Personally, I choose to overwrite the oldest save, so I select that option there. You can choose whatever you want here as personal preference, but I just choose to go with oldest save overwriting, and I haven't had an issue yet. Now let's get to my absolute favorite feature out of everything. There's an option here called Instant Sync, but we can't enable it yet until we enable scheduling, because right now our syncing is manual. We have to push the sync button ourselves to get it to work, and we don't want to do that. Our time is valuable. Head to the Scheduling tab, and then click the Schedule button. And I'm just going to call it Sync. Click the first checkbox to use it as default, and now you want to select how often you want to sync your saves. Obviously, this is going to have an impact on battery life, depending on your device, and it'll be personal preference for how often you want to sync. But I'm just going to leave it at 12 hours, and I'm going to show you why. Head to the Connection tab next, and you can add some settings here, if you'd like. For example, if you only want to sync while charging, or only on Wi-Fi, or only on certain Wi-Fi networks, just go through and you can select what you want. In the Notifications tab, do you want to know when your syncing is done, and if any errors have happened, and all of that. Personal preference on all of these, I'm just going to enable Show Errors. Then click Save. So where are we at? Right now, every 12 hours it's going to try and perform a sync, and it's all automatic, which is great. But that doesn't help us if we want to swap between devices before that 12 hours. I don't want to have to come back here manually and then just click the sync button before we open up another device. And that's where the instant sync feature comes in. So let's head there. If I enable instant sync, and this is my absolute favorite feature, it'll instantly sync any changes we make to our folders. So here's a real world example. If I jump into a game and I play that game and I decide that, hey, I want to save it now and I want to jump to another device. So we go ahead and do that, and then I check folder syncs history, and you can see that it already transferred our save right away. It didn't wait 12 hours, it just did it right away for us. which is beautiful because within seconds, you can now save, turn off the device, and jump over to another handheld and keep playing from the same save right away. So I've now showed you all of the steps. So imagine now that all of the next folders that you want to add and emulators that you want to sync is exactly the same steps as we just did. So sync to the right folder, then change to two-way, and enable the settings we did for each folder pair, and set up as many folder syncs as you want. Let me just quickly do RetroArch states so you can see what it looks like again. RetroArch states are located in the internal storage, RetroArch, and the states folder. In Google Drive, I need to create an RA states folder. Click Sync so that it sends all of my files to Google Drive. You can now see that everything's green, everything went perfect, so going to slide that toggle to two-way and sync again, and just in case. Now I'm going to adjust all of the other settings like we did before and add some scheduling. Then let's test it out by playing a game. Going to exit the game, and since I have the RetroArch setting for auto save state on exit enabled, it should have created a state. Let's go see folder sync. And there you go, it auto synced our state right away, and there's even a picture of the state as well. So now all of our RetroArch saves and states are synced from the device to the cloud, and it's perfect. We are all set, and we can now add more emulators and other folders and all of that. So just go down the list. Basically, just follow all of the exact same steps that we just did. And I shared it before, but if you want to know the paths to saves folders for other emulators, you can check the link in the description to see where they all are. Because at this point, the only thing that you need to know for other emulators to sync saves is the path. That is the only information you need to know. That is the only thing that is different between all of these different saves and folder pairs. So once you know the path, that's all you need, and you can create as many folder pairs as you want for MelinDS, for Yuzu, for NetherSX2, for Dolphin, for every other emulator. But now here comes the question. We just set up Odin 2. It's perfect. How do we get it synced to the Flip, to our RG353P, to our Pocket Air? How do we add more devices into this mix? And so I'm going to plug in my Odin 2, and you're going to see here that I'm syncing GameCube, PPSSPP, RetroArch, and Wii. You might have more, especially if you're syncing NetherSX2 and Yuzu and all of that, which also work. But either way, you have all of your syncs set up on your main device. And you just bought a new handheld because of course you did. So let's add it into the mix. The easiest way to do so is just to use folder sync to back up all of the things that we did within the app and restore it to a new device. So if you click the hamburger menu in the bottom left, scroll down to settings, and then backup, click backup folder and change it to your download folder. Then select backup database. Skip adding a password, it's just easier. And now go to open your file manager of choice, and I strongly suggest Solid File Explorer. Head to your download folder, and you should now see folder sync db zip. And it's right there. That's our backup. There's a million ways to do this next part, but all we have to do is get that zip file over to our new device. So just email it over, copy it over from the PC to USB, upload it to the cloud and grab it there. It doesn't matter what you do. Just get that file from your Odin or whatever device you started with to this new device that you just bought. All you have to do is transfer it over. Personally, I go the easy route. I just connect it via USB and I copy it over that way. Okay, so once you get that zip file over to the new device, let's go ahead and install Folder Sync from the Google Play Store on the new handheld and then agree to terms and privacy policy and give it all the permissions and everything that we did before until you get to the main screen. Now from the main screen, go to the hamburger menu, Settings, Backup, and Restore Database, and navigate to and select the zip file that we moved over. Restart the app, and now if you click the folder icon on the left, you're going to see all of your folder pairs right there, and they're ready to be synced. Now on this device, I don't have Dolphin installed, so I'm not going to be playing Dolphin on here. I'm just going to delete the GameCube and Wii folder pairs that I have here since it just doesn't make sense. Now this is important. For all of the folder pairs that you have, go into each of them and turn off scheduling for a minute. Don't skip this step. Make sure you turn off scheduling on all of them for right now. And there's a reason why. We just added a new device. And depending on if this just came out of the box brand new, or maybe you've been using this device for a little bit now, it might have some saves on it. And if it has some saves on it, and we turn on two-way sync and all of that sort of thing right now, you could mess up some saves. So let's make it easy. First up, if this is a device that you actually have been using and you have some saves on it, follow the same steps we did before, meaning back up the saves that are on this device, and then what you should do is just go individually in your saves and see if there's any ones that you want to keep. So for example, let's say it's a device that you're playing Pokemon Blue on, and your other devices you've been playing Pokemon Red. You want that Pokemon Blue save, so I would manually go ahead and upload it to your cloud service provider through a web browser or something like that, the way that you normally would handle cloud services. Just go ahead and manually upload that save and keep it out of there. Because what we want to do is we want to get to a spot where there is no saves or states anywhere on the device. We want it to be blank. So if you're starting brand new with a new device, you don't have to worry about this because you haven't played a game yet. For everybody else that might have some saves and states on this new device, back them up, put them wherever you want, and just make sure that before you start this next part, you have a blank slate to work with. That means your RetroArch saves folder is empty, your RetroArch states folder is empty. Any other emulators you're going to be syncing has an empty folder. Going back to folder sync now, and we're in the folder pair. And before we chose to the right folder because we were uploading files from the device to the Google Drive. But we have a blank slate device this time. And this time we want to bring the files from Google Drive or whatever service you're using to the device. So we're going to choose to left folder. Then go ahead and click sync. If we go ahead and check the history, you're going to see that it transferred everything over. And if you go and check your file manager and you go and look at the RetroArch saves folder, you should see all of your saves there. So what that means now is we're now in sync. We have local saves all correct, they're all there, and Google Drive, and all of the saves are the same on both, which means we can now go back to folder sync and just enable two-way sync, and we're set. Then just go ahead and turn on scheduling again, and if you want, you can click sync. Everything should be perfect at this point. Now you just have to rinse and repeat for all of the other folder pairs that you have. So my RetroArch states folder is empty, like I told you, so I'm just going to sync it, and then I'm going to change it to two-way, because that's what the steps are. But you might run into a weird bug doing this. For example, I ran into it with PPSSPP, where I went to go do these steps, and when I tried to sync it, it gave me a red error and it said folder not found. This is kind of just a bug. The actual path is correct, but for some reason, folder sync doesn't think it is. So you just have to manually go to the left folder and go to the right PPSSPP folder. So for save data or for states, whatever it is, just go ahead and navigate to the right folder and reselect it. You're not doing anything different, you're just reconfirming it for folder sync because it's confused. You can see that it happened to me for both PPSSPP saves and states, so just double check it if you get that error. And honestly, that is it. That is all you need to do. It should be pretty self-explanatory if you follow this guide on how you could add new emulators, new folders, anything you want to sync, as well as add it to other devices. Just follow the same steps, put it on as many devices as you want, And at that point, you can go from one device to another device to another device to another device almost instantly with the same saves and the same states. And I love it. It's made my life so much easier by setting this up because it is an awesome feature. Don't forget to like and sub to help the channel grow, and hope you all have a good one.